It's dirty.
Oh, right.
I just want a good view of me beating you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another race analysis video. This is another Tuesday night prep put on by Norwood Cycling Club. The Tour Down Under is here and racing is back in South Australia and I am super excited. It's going to be amazing. I've got a few days off over the next week or so, so I'm going to go see some pro racing around the streets of Adelaide. Tonight was warm, not too windy, so my expectation was that the race would stick together for pretty much the whole thing. I didn't expect any big breaks to get up the road. Normally that happens when it's really windy, but today it was quiet, and so theoretically at least it's all going to stay together. The big unknown tonight is of course that we've got racers coming from interstate. I've got no idea how they're going to race. I don't know if they're going to be aggressive and go for breaks off the gun. I don't know how strong they're going to be, so today, instead of knowing who I'm racing against, I'm pretty much racing blind. There's obviously all the big hitters. The guy in the black kit on the red bike behind me is Webby. There's Frank with the beard behind me. I don't know who this rider is in the coupe kit, so we're going to see how they go. As you saw at the beginning of the clip, Toby's mouthing off. He reckons he's going to beat me. He beats me. But anyway, it's going to be a good race. So we're 4 laps in. As I expected, it's been reasonably quiet. There's been a few attacks off the front, but because it's been so still, they've been chased down pretty quickly. As a result, I've let myself drift back just to keep it easy, but at this point I think as we're coming around the corner, I'm perhaps a bit too far back, and if something does go off the front, as you can see they're miles ahead, I might need to cover it. The nice thing about Vic Park is the wind's slight headwind just from the left-hand shoulder. Everyone tends to slow down, ease up off the back straight, and so with a little bit of effort, you can move right up to the front. I think I put in 200 or 300 watts just for a second or two, which moves me right around the corner. Coming into this bottom corner, it's pretty clean. The Clipsal, or the Adelaide 500 from a few weeks ago, the rubber on the road's cleared up. Coming around this corner, I yell at this rider who's moving across to the left, but she closes the door, and that's fine because she's sprinting and she ends up giving me a pretty good pull all the way up. There's a bit of a gap opening up ahead of her. As you can see from the shadow, I've sat down and she's doing all the work to close the gap, so I could have pushed past her, but as it turns out she did the work for me. And as usual, people slow down as we go through the start finish line, and you can move up again pretty easily, so it doesn't tend to matter too much if you lose a few wheels there. And the same thing here as we come down the back straight. People ease up and just a little bit of effort moves me right up to the front. Now the big question is always what you're going to do with it. If you are going to get yourself to the front, why? Why are you working hard? At this point I'm only doing just a little bit over threshold to get to the front. Now I don't actually want to be on the front. We're way too early in the race. We're 5 laps in. It's a 35-minute race plus a couple of laps. I'm not a breakaway rider. I'm not going to be able to keep away from the bunch unless I've got a big group with me. So why do I want to be so close to the front? Well, the truth is I really don't, except that it's easy. I say easy, I'm doing 800 watts coming out of the corner, but so is everyone in the draft. And so while I'm sitting here fourth wheel, I'm too close to the front, frankly. There's nothing up the road. We're not really chasing anything. Unless I'm really just watching for a break to go, which I don't want to be the one closing everything, I think right here I'm too close to the front. So Charlie in the Butterfield kit's been on the front for half a lap or so. He's sat up and pulled up, and I figure at this point, since I'm so close to the front, it's slowing down. What should I do? But attack. It's not how I'm going to win this race, but it's a bit of fun. We are early enough in the race that I'm going to be able to recover for the finish if I don't do too much stupid after this. And hey, what's a race without having some fun? So I put the effort down and hope a couple of people come with me. I think 1 or 2 do in this race. Yeah, one more comes across with us and unfortunately doesn't really get anywhere, but I do get my face in the camera, which is always good. About 20 seconds later, the Peloton catches us up and we go on with the race. Now this is a good example of what not to do when you get caught. I stuck too close to the front, and in actual fact, this guy number 115, Mike McManus, he, Frank and I, who had been in that break, basically just stayed on the front. Mike came through and did a turn, Frank did a turn. Alex Lucas just launched off the front with one of his trademark attacks. And then Mike McManus has just stuck on the front. He's just kept going, and I'm now sitting second wheel for no real good reason. But as we're coming out of the corner, remembering Alex is up the road at this point, Mike just absolutely floors it, and since I'm in that position, since I'm already at the front, I figure it might be worth giving it another dig. People tend to sit up coming across the start-finish line, so maybe we'll see what happens this time. Now that move doesn't go anywhere, but number 115's been right at the front. Basically, every time something goes up, he'll hop on it and just hang around. I didn't think, to be honest, when he was doing the work on the front that he was going particularly fast, but he was always there. So he wasn't, when he was in the break, he wasn't pulling so hard that I thought he was going to be a super strong sprinter at the end. But he was always at the front. And then when Webby makes this attack off on the left in the black kit, he just easily cruises up behind him. And that's probably something I should have been a bit more cautious of. Anyway, I slipped back and let the field do a little bit of the rest of the chasing for a bit. Or at least I thought I'd get off the front, but as soon as I did, attacks started going up the road, and I ended up having to close a few gaps. I thought this girl in the coupe kit would stick this wheel and close it to Nick Underwood. She didn't, so I had to jump across. And then a few seconds later, there's a big group of 5 or 6 up the road, and that's starting to get dangerous. The golden rule is 3's too few, 5's about right, 6 is too many. And there's 5 up the road, so that's a break that's potentially going to go all the way to the end, and I've got to close it down. Or at least I felt like I did. I was coming past with a bit of speed, bit of momentum. The group at the front that I was passing looked like they'd absolutely sat up, and so I felt like I had to. In all honesty, if I'd sat up and just let someone else do it, it probably would have closed too. But on the other hand, he could have gone up the road, and that could have been the winning break of the race. So you just don't know. Less than a lap later, everything's back together again, and Mr. 115 goes off the front yet again. This time though, I see one of my teammates go off with him, and at this point I've got a bit of an interesting decision to make, because this is not a teams race. We're not racing as teams, but he is a member of my team. We are wearing the same kit, so what do? In this case, I take the easy route and I just let someone else pull through. So I'm going to let a few people come through. I don't want to let too many wheels go through. If a group does go off the front, I want to either be on the back of it and getting the draft up to the front group. And so as we come down the back straight, once again things slow down. There are, however, a couple of really big hitters in this group, and so if it is going to go across to Pete, my teammate, I think I probably want to go with it. And when Toby starts trying to chase us down, I think that's something that I really want to go with. As it happens, Toby does a whole lot of the work, closes down most of the gap, and indeed by the time we get down to the bottom corner, it's pretty clear we're going to catch at least some of them. When we do come through the bottom corner, Toby's done a lot of work, and Pete's dropped off the back of that front rider. Mr. 115 is still at the front, but Toby's being the powerhouse that he is, and he's going to close it down, which is very nice of him. Thank you, Toby. And just as we catch up with Mr. 115, who goes up the front, Alex Luca. Now this is an aggressive attack. He is absolutely flying. He said afterwards he wanted to piss off as many people as he could, and I think he's doing a good job. Toby's just about done. He's closed down 115. 115's been off the front. I'm certainly not interested in chasing after Alex. There's no way in hell I'm catching him when he's got that much of a gap, so let's let some other people do some work. After quite a bit of hesitation, Cycling Dynamics in the blue and black kit comes through to take a bit of a turn, and guess who's on his wheel? Mr. 115 himself. I think at this stage I really should have been paying closer attention to him. He's just been off the front, and yet after someone else has attacked, he's second wheel in the chase. Turns out that the pace is a bit of a false tempo, and so I decide that since Alex is getting a bit too far up the road, he's got a handicap of about 10 seconds at this point, I'm going to do some work. Now this isn't really an attack. I'm only doing 500 watts, 600 watts out of the corner, which everyone has to do, and then I'm going to settle in at about 400. I've got an aero, but I'm really not attacking. I'm just trying to inject some pace into the chase. I'm not in it for the long haul, and I'm going to flick an elbow pretty quickly, but I figure just by doing a decent turn, getting the pace back up, we've got a better chance of bringing him back. Frank's sitting on my wheel, and sure enough, when I flick the elbow, he comes through and takes up the pulling. But even after all of that, who comes through directly after Frank? Mr. 115 himself. He's just everywhere in this race. Not all that long later, the race is split up a bit. There's now 3 or 4 people up the road, and Charlie Abel in the Butterfield kits comes absolutely flying by. Now I don't actually know it's Charlie at this point, but I know it's a Butterfield's kit, and these guys are known for doing really strong breakaways. So I'm yelling out to try to get other people to take on the chase, and once again I can see a dangerous group going up the road, and this time I managed to sneak through and get off and try to bridge to it by myself. Now my heart rate's at 181 beats a minute, coming through the top corner at 45 k's an hour. I do look back and see that I've got a good gap, and I can just see them so close ahead of me, and I decided I'm going to put my head down and try to get across, pumping out 700, 800 watts. I figured down this back straight with a slight tailwind, if I can make it across by myself, by the end of the straight, I should be alright, I should be able to keep up. What I don't want to do is get to them at the very end, because then I've got to punch out of the corner, again up to 800 watts. Fortunately, I get close enough that I can get in the draft and sit on. And at this point, we've got a really good group. We've got 5 riders, represented a bunch of teams. We've got Keystone, we've got Butterfields, we've got some Norwood riders, we've got a Rocket rider. This is a group that, in theory, shouldn't be chased too hard. The only question is whether or not we're going to work together. There's some super strong riders in here, though. We've got 142, Alex Luca. We've got 150, which is Frank Smith, who just won the Masters Cat 1 Super Series. We've got 115 himself, Mike McManus. We've got Charlie Abel from Butterfields. This is a strong group, and this really should go all the way. But for whatever reason, we get picked up again anyway. I think people were spending too long at the front, not going hard enough at the front. Breakaway of 5, you really need to be spending 20 seconds at the front at full bore and then pulling off. And the group picks us up. And yet somehow, even having been on the attack in the break, Mr. 115, Mike McManus, manages to get off the front again by himself. Nick Underwood in the 80X green kit goes across with him. And I mean, to be honest, I'm not really too worried about this. Nick's a strong breakaway rider by himself, but we've got 5-10 minutes of the race to go. We've got 10 minutes of the race to go. And the McManus guy has been off the front all race, and he must be tired by now. But they start building a gap, and the gap starts to open. And at this stage, I am beginning to wonder whether or not I've missed what is the race-winning move. People begin sitting up. Toby gets back on the front and starts pulling a turn. But things do ease up a little bit, and I figure at this point I'm going to take a few seconds to rest, and then whatever happens, I'm going to go with the next attack that tries to bridge over them. I figure I've put too many eggs in my breakaway basket so far. I'm probably not going to do all that well in a sprint, so I should probably keep going on the breakaway. So we're a lap and a half later, nothing's really gone, and then I figure, as I said, going with the next thing to go across. But hey, guess what? It's a teammate. Now, I've had chance as much as you can to recover in this when he goes, and I know that's the wheel to go. But you don't chase your teammate. He launched probably a second or so before I was going to do it myself. When he did, you just don't chase. So here I am, sitting on the front, 220 watts. I am, making bones like I'm chasing, but I'm not. I can see that's Art Markov go off the road. And I figure that's probably the winning move, which also kind of takes the pressure off me. I don't need to chase anymore. I've got a teammate in inverted commas up the road. But with 5 minutes and a couple of laps left in the race, it's kind of a bit ho-hum just sitting there watching the race go up the road, even if you have got a teammate in it. As we come through with about 3 laps to go, guess who attacks again? As he said, just trying to piss everyone off. At this point I figure if he's going to tow me all the way to the front, I might as well go with him. I'm not going to do any work at this point, but I'd rather be on his wheel. Maybe I can piss him off a bit in return. He swings over, and since I've got a gap and some momentum, I put in a bit of a dig, but pretty quickly it put the parachutes out. This corner here shows just how important it is to get your line right through the corner. I turn when I want to turn, undercut both of the other riders, and end up way out in front of them with much more speed. I don't actually want to be on the front, but I also don't want to be hitting the brakes through the corner. And that's actually a bit of a problem. I am on the front. I'm going to sit up and I'm just going to do threshold coming out of the corner. You'll remember I normally hit sort of 500-600 watts coming up this little rise here. And I want to drop back, but I don't want to drop back too far. But what unfortunately ends up happening is, because we're coming into 2 laps to go, this is when the field accelerates. And so now I'm sitting here doing 300-400 watts, just trying to get back up to speed. Meanwhile, the whole bunch is just whistling past me. And when I finally do manage to get up to the same speed as the Peloton, I've lost just about 3/4 of the race's length, and burned a match that I probably didn't have to, just trying to get back up to speed. Here we are, we're coming up on 1 lap to go. I'm in a pretty ordinary position. There's a bit of a gap ahead of the rider in front of me. Fortunately, he does most of the work to close that. But I know that there's a couple of riders up the road, and from what I could see from the last lap, they're not coming back. They've got at least a 10-second gap, and there's a good couple of strong riders up there. So, what am I going to do? I see another one of my teammates, Pete. This is the guy who went early in the race that I decided not to follow. I give him a bit of a flick, tell him to get on my wheel. He shakes his head and says, "Nah, mate, I'm not a sprinter." And this really shows where having a teammate who can just move you up to the front of the race at the end comes into play. I'm going to burn a match here. I want to move up to the front, and if there was a sprinter on my wheel, I would have just gone absolutely balls to the wall all the way up to the front of this line. As it is, I'm moving up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wheels, a bit at a time, but I don't want to cook myself entirely, and I don't really want to be sitting on the front. If there was someone in my wheel, I would have. Now, the thing I should have done here is kept going all the way to the front and taken a few seconds once I'd hit first, second, maybe third wheel. As it is, I'm coming out of the bottom corner, 10th wheel, and it's way too far back. The guys ahead of me are already sprinting. I've been in the wind. I haven't had any chance to recover. You can see Toby up ahead of me. He's launched already. I have to sit down for a second here. There's no real clear way to get around this guy. So I sit down, gear up a bit, and launch what I've got left. All of which is kind of a bit pointless. Charlie Abel flies past me a million miles an hour. So a bit of a Bitzer race. I didn't have a particularly coherent plan, and I kept hopping from one thing to another. They say you need to be flexible, but I think you do need to pick one lane and try to ride in it. Mr. 115, Mike McManus, took the win easily. The 80X guy in green came second, and my teammate came third. Both of them were 6 seconds behind him, so it was a fun race though, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.